Your best ideas are starving, and you're the one holding the food. You've trained yourself to never sit in silence. The second a gap opens, the walk to the gym, the wait for the kettle, the drive across town, your thumb finds the play button. A podcast, a playlist, some founder explaining his morning routine into a microphone. You call it learning, you call it staying sharp. By the end of this, you'll see why that constant feed is quietly strangling the exact thing you're trying to build. Here's the part nobody told you. The brain has two modes, and they don't run at the same time. One mode takes things in. It listens, reads, absorbs, files everything away. The other mode does something stranger and far more valuable. It takes everything you've already collected and starts wiring it together, looking for connections that weren't obvious when each piece came in separately. Researchers who study this call it the default mode network, the circuitry that lights up precisely when you're doing nothing in particular. Staring out a train window, folding laundry, walking with no destination and no audio. That second mode is where original thought actually gets made, and it has one non-negotiable requirement. You have to be bored enough to let it switch on. Think about where your real ideas have come from. The shower, the long drive, that stretch of a walk where your mind drifted and suddenly a problem you'd been stuck on for weeks just untangled itself. You didn't force it. You weren't grinding. You were idle, and the answer assembled itself behind your back. Now ask yourself an uncomfortable question. When was the last time you let that happen on purpose? For most people, the honest answer is not in years, because every one of those moments now has a soundtrack. Watch what's really going on under the surface. Every podcast you consume is input. Every video, every audiobook at 1.5 speed, every newsletter input. You're pouring knowledge into the tank at an incredible rate, and it feels productive because the counter keeps going up. More facts, more frameworks, more clever takes you can repeat at a dinner party. But knowledge sitting in the tank just sits there. It has to combine. Two unrelated things you learned 6 months apart have to bump into each other and spark. That collision is the whole game. That collision only happens in the quiet. So picture what you've actually engineered. You've built a life with no quiet. You've taken the one window where your accumulated knowledge could finally combine into something that's yours, and you've filled it with more people's voices. You're the person who keeps buying ingredients and never turns on the stove. This cuts against everything you've been sold. The whole self-improvement world points one direction. Consume more, faster. Read 100 books a year. Listen at double speed. Never waste a minute of dead time. And it sounds like ambition. It feels like discipline, but run it forward. A person optimizing purely for input is quietly removing the only condition that produces output. You can be the most well-read person in the room and still walk out having made nothing that didn't already exist before you walked in. Now, you might be thinking the input still matters, and you're right. This is the honest counterpoint, so let's deal with it head on. An empty mind in a silent room produces an empty room. The synthesis engine has nothing to combine if you never feed it. The library matters. The books, the conversations, the hours of real study, all of it is raw material, and you need a lot of it. But raw material is just bricks. You've been so focused on hauling bricks to the site that you never stopped long enough to lay a single one. So the question becomes, how much of your day is hauling and how much is building? Be honest about the ratio, the way a few people in a weekly circle would force you to be. I started logging it inside Pledge, Mastermind Circle. You set a weekly goal with real stakes and a handful of people hold you to it. Link in the description. And the honest number was ugly. For most ambitious people right now, it's something like 99-1. And they wonder why, with all that input, nothing original ever comes out. There's a reason this feels so counterintuitive. Consuming gives you an instant hit. Every podcast episode ends with that satisfying little click of completion. That sense that you got smarter. Synthesis gives you nothing on demand. It works on its own schedule, in the background, and it hands you the breakthrough hours later when you're brushing your teeth. So your brain, doing exactly what brains do, chases the thing with the immediate reward and starves the thing that pays late. The feed wins because it pays now. Your own ideas lose because they pay slow. Watch how this plays out in a real week. You're building something on the side, an app, a brand, a channel, whatever's yours. You've consumed dozens of hours of advice on it. Tactics, breakdowns, case studies. You know more about the topic than the version of you from a year ago could have dreamed. And yet the actual thing barely moves, because the move that matters, figuring out what only you could build in your specific situation with your specific pieces, that move requires the engine you keep refusing to start. No amount of input substitutes for the connecting. You can't download a connection between two things only you happen to know. That has to be made in you, in the quiet. Here's what changes when you flip even a small piece of it. You don't need a meditation retreat. You don't need to delete every app. You need to start protecting a few windows a day and guarding them like they're worth something, because they're worth more than the content you'd have filled them with. Start with the commute. That drive, that train ride, that walk. Leave the earbuds in your pocket. The first 10 minutes will feel like withdrawal. Your hand will twitch toward your phone the way a smoker reaches for a pack. Sit in it. By minute 15-something shifts. Your mind, finally off the leash, starts wandering through the projects you're building, the problem you couldn't crack, the thing someone said last week that didn't sit right. It starts connecting. That's the engine turning over. You've heard it idle 1,000 times and called it boredom. Do the same with one meal a day. No screen, no audio, just you and the food and a drifting mind. Do it on the walk you'd normally narrate with a podcast. The aim is to give the synthesis mechanism enough runway to actually take off. And the people building genuinely original things, the ones whose work makes you wonder how they even thought of that, almost all guard this fiercely. They're protective of empty time in a way that looks lazy from the outside. They take long walks alone. They sit and stare. They leave deliberate gaps in the day where nothing is scheduled and no voice is playing. From the outside, it reads as wasted hours. From the inside, it's where the entire job actually gets done. The output you admire was made in the silence they refuse to fill. There's a cost here, and I want to be straight about it. Choosing silence means choosing to feel at first like you're falling behind. While you're walking with no podcast, someone in your feed is bragging about the 4 audiobooks they finished this week. Your input counter stops climbing. That's genuinely hard, because the counter going up is what's been making you feel like you're winning. You'll have to sit with the discomfort of looking less productive in order to become more original. Most people can't pay that price. They reach for the earbuds inside of 30 seconds and call the silence a waste. That's exactly why most people produce nothing but echoes of what they consumed. Notice what you're really protecting when you protect that quiet. It's the presence of you, your own mind finally allowed to do the one thing no podcast can do for it: synthesize. Take everything you are and have learned and lived and weld it into something that has your fingerprints on it. No creator you follow can hand you that. It only gets made in a room they're not allowed into. So think about what you actually want from all this effort. You want to make things a business, a body of work, a skill, a way of seeing the world that's unmistakably yours. And real making, requires a step that consumption can never replace: the combining. The quiet collision of ideas you gathered separately, finally meeting in an empty hour. You already have more raw material than you think. Years of reading, watching, listening, living. It's all in there, waiting. The bottleneck was never how much you knew. The bottleneck was that you never gave it the silence it needed to assemble. You kept the input valve wide open and wondered why nothing came out the other side. Try this as a test, not a lifestyle. For the next week, pick one daily window: the commute, the workout, one meal, and run it on silence. No audio, no screen. Just you and a wandering mind. Watch what surfaces. Watch the half-formed idea you didn't know you were carrying float up the moment you stop drowning it in someone else's words. Keep a note on your phone for whatever appears, because things will appear. They always do the second you stop talking over yourself. You've spent years learning how to take the world in. The skill you're missing is the opposite one: the ability to be quiet long enough to let what's already inside you turn into something new. That skill has no app, no course, no playlist. It only needs a gap and the nerve to leave it empty. Your move is simple, and it starts the next time a quiet moment opens up. Leave it alone. Guard it like the workshop it actually is, and let your mind get to work in the silence you finally stopped being afraid of.